Hey guys, this video took a little longer than usual. Was actually hoping to get it out sooner. But thank you guys for 700 subscribers. It makes me really happy that people actually watch and enjoy these videos. Anyways, I hope you liked the video. In June of 2019, Richard Saxon published a 3-part series titled The Ocean is Much Deeper Than We Thought. We'll be talking about the void entities from this story, also known as the syncytium, which is the last time I will be saying that word. So just a little heads up if you intend on reading the story unspoiled. It's an excellent read, or about an hour's listen via audiobook. Moving on to the story, the United States Navy, using its global network of hydrophones, began picking up an acoustic anomaly that was causing mass migration of oceanic life towards a single point in the Pacific. By tracking these migrations, the Navy located the entrance to an incredibly deep cavern system beneath the known seafloor. To explore this newly discovered void, they built the USS Orion in a specialized abyssal transport capsule called the Needle. Upon venturing past the known limits of the ocean, the US Navy encountered signs of life that shouldn't exist at these pressures. They initially tried to recover the specimens of this new discovery for weaponization. Upon realizing that the threat posed by bringing these parasitic worm-like creatures to the surface was far too great, they shuttled that idea. The US Navy High Command then shifted gears to pure containment. Physically, at their most basic level, the void entities look like translucent pale white worms. Together, they form a highly intelligent hive mind capable of global strategic planning, along with being able to reanimate and mimic its victims. For example, a blue whale, lured by the great calling sound produced by the hive mind, essentially summited to its death. Its death was not exclusively caused by the crushing pressure, but also the utter infiltration by the worms. The parasites hollowed the whale out, entering from the blowhole, mouth, and eyes, eating the internal organs and replacing them. Further, we learn that the parasites are also able to mimic the whale in a way by continuing to manipulate its skin in a disturbing, unnatural fashion, sort of like a giant flesh puppet. Realizing the absolute nightmare threat this parasite poses, they quarantined the existing infrastructure and personnel involved in this deep-sea operation, sending a CDC medical doctor to determine if the reports were true or if the crew was perhaps suffering from some sort of collective psychosis. Officially, he was to deem that the crew should remain in quarantine. Upon reaching the site, the CDC is able to confirm additional details about the parasitic worms. They have the ability to mimic humans, similar to what they did to the blue whale carcass. People infected by the worms eventually look waxy, and their skin might seem slightly translucent or, quote, too tight. Movement is also an obvious indicator, because essentially the worms are operating the body like a puppet. The person's movements are jerky and slightly offbeat. But the most surefire way to confirm if someone is indeed infected by the worms is to inspect their insides. If cut, they don't bleed. More disturbingly, bones and organs are gone, entirely replaced by a solid, gross, vibrating mass of worms. Ultimately, in the story, the parasite escapes containment and reaches the surface by lodging itself inside of the lead CDC medical doctor. Quite ironic. But that aside, I highly recommend giving the story a look. It makes for great bath time reading material. Near the surface, the water is often clear and inviting. Creatures there aren't particularly aggressive, some are even friendly or curious, but descend thousands of meters and everything changes. Darkness, crushing cold, and immense pressure. Creatures so grotesquely deformed that they barely resemble their shallow water cousins. Take the smelt, for example, a small peaceful fish, 10 to 30 centimeters long, with large eyes and simmering silvery scales. It almost looks like a harmless herring, not compared to the viperfish, a deep-sea predator with a transparent body that exposes its skeleton, tiny eyes, and enormous fangs. While they share distant evolutionary roots in the broader fish family tree, the abyss has twisted one into something nightmarish. But some abyssal creatures look so utterly alien that they look like visitors from another planet. One of the most striking examples is the Bigfin squid, Magnapinna. The oceanic abyss reshapes life in brutal ways. Evolution deforms and cripples these organisms to survive the extremes. In exchange, they gain extraordinary longevity and a stable environment, largely shielded from the chaos and catastrophes of the surface world. Yet this sparse, otherworldly biodiversity depends on one bizarre and unsettling process: marine snow. It isn't snow at all, it's flesh. In the deep ocean, most creatures rely on organic matter drifting from above like an endless, slow-motion snowfall. Tiny fragments of dead plankton, fecal pellets, discarded body parts, and decaying tissue sink through the water column, providing the primary food source for the abyss. Sometimes, though, something far larger arrives. One of the most dramatic events is the whale fall. When a whale dies, its massive body begins a long descent, taking hours to a full day, depending on the depth. Once it reaches the seafloor, it becomes an instant oasis of food in an otherwise barren landscape. First come the mobile scavengers. Deep-sea sharks tear into the flesh, then smaller scavengers like fish, sea spiders, and crabs pick at the remains. Over time, specialized microbes and bone-eating worms break down even the skeleton, liquefying the bones and sustaining life for decades. A single whale can feed a patch of the abyss and hadal zones for up to a century. Imagine surviving in total darkness under crushing pressure, with your only substance being the occasional shower of rotting flesh drifting down from the world above. The marine snow that sustains the deep is a constant reminder of death, and it makes the oceanic abyss feel even more profoundly disturbing. The DeSmet lake monster, also known as Smetty, has been stirring around on the internet for over a decade now, but it still remains sort of unknown, so I thought I'd share this rather interesting lake cryptid. Lake DeSmet in Johnson County, Wyoming has long been the center of several urban legends, the most notable being that of the DeSmet Lake Monster. The lake was first documented in a letter by Pierre John DeSmet, whom the lake is named after, in August of 1851, noting that the lake was rather small, being only, quote, 6 miles long, although he made no mentions of any lake monsters. During the Powder River expedition of 1865, Captain Henry E. Palmer would also encounter the lake, noting that it was so heavily impregnated with alkali that a potato could float on its surface. We would hear nothing of any lake monsters for decades until 3 ranchers in 1892 witnessed an enormous shadow in the water, closely resembling the silhouette of a sea serpent according to the 3 men. It's important to note that during this period in 1892, the Johnson County region was embroiled in an intense conflict between large cattle barons and small ranchers in the area, dubbed as the Johnson County War. It was obviously not a traditional war, but more so a class war. Interestingly, the war reached its most violent peak in 1892, the same year the 3 ranchers made the sighting, before U.S. cavalry intervention subdued a standoff between Sheriff Red Angus and his posse of over 400 enraged homesteaders and around 50 trapped big cattle hired gunmen, along with a number of wealthy cattle barons. This whole standoff debacle took place at TA Ranch, not far from Lake DeSmet. On a side note, just because I think it's funny, the only battle casualty of this whole 500-man 3-day ranch siege was cattle baron Billy Irvin, who unfortunately got his big toe shot off while he was sitting inside the ranch house. Going back to Smetty, it's possible that this intense and chaotic war environment, along with the influx of journalists into Johnson County, created the perfect storm for a lake monster sighting. It's highly possible that the 3 ranchers were not in their best senses or had schemed to utilize the already primed conditions to sensationalize their sightings. You might have noticed that I haven't gone into detail about what the monster actually looks like. That's simply because we don't know actually. We have so many competing theories and descriptions that they all really sort of cancel each other out. It's been described as an alligator-like beast with glowing eyes, to a swan snake hybrid creature with a quote graceful neck. Some accounts describe it as small as 30 feet, while others say it's at least 150 feet long. So do you believe in Smetty, or is he just some old Wild West lake monster made up by war-shook profiteers? Let me know in the comments below. Another chilling layer of marine horror comes from the sounds of the deep. Many of you have probably already heard of the balloon, an ultra-low frequency rumble detected by NOAA in 1997. It was incredibly powerful, detectable across thousands of kilometers, far larger than the brief spike of an underwater explosion. Officially, NOAA says it was caused by an ice quake, a massive iceberg cracking and calving from an Antarctic glacier, but for some reason the scale and location near the cold, remote waters off Antarctica still hint at something enormous lurking beneath the ice. I actually touched on this in my Antarctica video, but fewer people know about the other eerie signals NOAA has captured over the years. Take Julia, for instance. Recorded on March 1st, 1999, this ultra-low frequency sound lasted over 2 minutes and eerily resembled a woman's voice murmuring underwater, hence the name. It was picked up across the entire equatorial Pacific hydrophone array. NOAA's explanation, likely a large iceberg grounding on the seafloor off Antarctica, scraping and groaning as it settled. Then there's the train, or sea train. Captured in 1997, it consists of steady, rhythmic tones that slowly rise in frequency, mimicking the distant chug and whistle of a locomotive rolling through the night. Again, NOAA traces it back to a massive iceberg in the Ross Sea near Cape Adare, its keel dragging slowly across the ocean floor, generating those haunting vibrations. And upsweep. a recurring sound in the Pacific since at least 1991. Long sequences of narrow band tones sweeping upward every few seconds, like an endless otherworldly siren. Peaks seasonally in spring and fall, and the leading theory points to underwater volcanic or seismic activity in a remote stretch of ocean. Most of these mysterious noises ultimately trace back to ice, calving, cracking, or grinding against the seabed. Yet the ocean itself produces its own constant soundtrack, ambient noise, sometimes called the earth hum. This low, persistent vibration, felt more than heard, arises mainly from ocean waves. When swells collide or crash against continental slopes and coasts, they transfer energy into the seafloor, creating a subtle, planet-wide resonance. It's like the earth is breathing or whispering. This actually reminds me of the sentient ocean in Scariest. In the story, an entire planet is covered by a vast, intelligent sea that probes the minds of human researchers orbiting above. They respond to their presence by materializing figures from their memories, loved ones, regrets, and fears, forcing them to confront their inner demons. The scientists struggle to tell if it's trying to communicate, experiment on them, or simply reacting in ways utterly alien to human understanding. Our own ocean covers most of the planet, silent and immense, constantly humming beneath the surface. What if it's been speaking all along, and sounds we dismiss as ice, waves, or volcanoes? And maybe we're just not listening closely enough. In December of 1964, while French photographer Robert Louis Sirach, accompanied by his wife and 2 children, along with an Australian friend, Hank de Jong, were crossing the Stonington Bay, they spotted a large tadpole-shaped creature resting on the floor of the lagoon. The group, now intrigued, maneuvered the motorboat directly over the dark tadpole, Robert estimating from the surface that it's roughly 30 feet long. Robert, conveniently having camera equipment and the necessary underwater housing, started photographing the creature, capturing the now famous stills, during which he noticed a large pale area on the right side of its tail, which Robert believed to be a massive wound, perhaps caused by another ship or worse, monster. Believing the large tadpole might be dead or injured to the point of being unable to swim, Robert and Hank decided to don snorkeling gear to film the creature closer up underwater. Not great survival instincts on these guys. Getting a better view of the creature, they realized it is much larger than they had assumed on the surface, now estimating its length at 75 to 80 feet. Robert noting pale green or nearly white eyes. On the top of its head, smooth black, shark-like skin, and a mouth approximately 4 feet wide with small teeth. During this close examination, Robert and Hank are within 20 feet of the tadpole. But as Robert prepared to start his 8mm movie camera, the creature suddenly opened its mouth and made a jolt towards the pair. Obviously startled, Hank and Robert retreated back to the boat, at which point they say the beast had disappeared deeper into the water. I'll keep it straight with you guys. Obviously, this is about the scariest underwater monsters and cryptids in internet history, but I still think it's important to cover some little details when they do come up. Obviously, we'll be covering fictional and supposedly real monsters in this video, and since the Hook Island sea monster is presented as a real underwater cryptid, it's important to look at it critically. Robert, our main source for all this information, is a dubious narrator to say the least, having been apparently wanted by Interpol and French authorities on charges of financial fraud and debt evasion. Facing financial ruin in France, he fled, leaving behind a trail of unpaid creditors, telling associates before doing so that his upcoming trip would be, quote, financially fruitful because it would involve a, quote, sea serpent. Turning our attention back to the actual sighting of the sea serpent itself, it is quite odd that a man of Robert's disposition, that being a devastatingly bankrupt man wanted by the police, would at the perfect moment have exceptionally expensive and heavy specialized underwater filming equipment ready to go at a moment's notice in 1964. Quite plainly, it's absurd. So was this all an elaborate plan to profit from publicity and placate his debtmongers in France and get the authorities off his back? I'll leave that for you to decide. But what I will add is that Robert eventually sold exclusive rights to his story and photographs to Everyone magazine for a, quote, significant sum. Shortly after, he moved on from Australia, his departure being as quiet as his arrival. His only recent appearance is being spotted in 2003, living somewhere in Asia. But that brings us to the end of the shenanigans of Robert and his tadpole misadventures. Sorry to go all true detective on you guys. Back to sea monsters, I promise. The Magnapinna bigfin squid is the deepest dwelling squid ever recorded, at depths exceeding 6,000 meters. Infamously, a juvenile bigfin squid was filmed at a depth of 6,200 meters. Now, you might assume the older a bigfin squid gets, the deeper they go. But most adult bigfins are spotted in the abyssal zone, which is 3,000 to 6,000 meters. It's entirely possible that we just haven't looked deep enough to see how far the adult bigfins can truly go. I would say that one of the main reasons the bigfin squid is so infamous online is due to its alien-like appearance at such deep depths, and the elbows definitely don't help. Because we've only seen so few, it's hard to get a max size estimate, but guesses put it up to lengths of 20 to 26 feet, which is 6 to 8 meters. To me, the most interesting part of the bigfin squid is where they lay their eggs. It's not entirely known since no human has ever seen a bigfin squid laying eggs, but I personally like the deep to shallow theory. Formerly, it would be an upward ontogenic migration. They lay their eggs deep in the hadal zone, and at these depths predators are fewer and thus it's safer for the defenseless eggs. And as the bigfin squids grow, they likely migrate upwards towards the abyssal zone. Regardless, the bigfin squid has a special place in online sea horror, being an enduring sensation. But anyways, that brings us to the end of this video, guys. And if you enjoyed it and would like to see me cover more underwater cryptids and monsters, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.